Hi, you're listening to Listed by Mina Kuper, 98.1 FM, 1220 AM. We're about real estate, trust, probate, divorce, and more. I'm a certified trust and probate realtor. I also deal with all the solutions of relationships. I'm with Keller Williams. And today I'm very excited to have Amy Valdivia on the phone, American Financial Network, and she is a specialist in divorce and many other arenas when it comes to mortgages and trying to assess the best way to go when buying and selling properties in this arena. Amy, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. It's, all this is so interesting. And I know with your personality, it's emotional for people, right? And, and people can't think straight or whatever. But, with your personality, I know, people that you've dealt with, they're so happy and very soothing for them. And I'm really excited that I've met you. So tell me.
Our connection is great. Yes.
Yeah. So, as a certified mortgage advisor, tell me a little bit about, what that entails, different types of situations you deal with other than conventional things. Tell us a little more about the unconventional things.
So as a certified mortgage advisor, when people come to me, they want to buy a home or they want to refinance their home. They want to figure out how to utilize a mortgage to finance their home and create some wealth. So that designation allows me to look at the whole entire picture. We look at all of the solutions for home financing. Many times people come and they say, oh, well, I want to sell this house and buy this house and do this and do that. Well, we can talk about all of those things that you want to do. But did you think about the tax ramifications? Did you think about the fact that when you buy somebody else out, that you're going to receive a notice from the county that's going to talk about the fact that title changed and now they want to try to reassess your property? Little things like that. We need to look at the whole entire picture. Why are you even financing this house? Why are you refinancing? Why are you getting cash out versus triggering an equity buyout? All different solutions, that's where we come into play. And then when you add the designation as a certified divorce lending professional, that's the game changer because we use the mortgage advisory piece along with the divorce designation to guide people through what can be one of the most difficult times in their life. The more education we can give to a client, a borrower in whatever transaction they're in when it comes to their home, they feel more confident. They've made the right decision. They've been guided appropriately. And that's where they walk away a little more calmly.
So, Amy, give us a couple of examples for people coming to husband, wife, wanting to potentially get divorced or things like that. So tell us what are some possibilities in that kind of situation?
So the number one situation that I find myself being involved in is what's called an equity buyout. And the easiest way for me to explain that is the wife, for example, wants to stay in the home. The husband says, you can stay in the home, but I want my portion of the equity. Well, what is the equity? The equity buyout is a process where we use a mortgage to complete that process. So we now take a look at the whole profile of the property and we figure out how much he's owed. Usually at that time, there's an attorney involved as well. Most often a collaborative divorce attorney, mediator is involved. And they're talking to me about, okay, tell me how much she can afford to stay in the house. What can she qualify for? I work up that loan and I say, this is what she can qualify for and I can get her this much money. And then they're doing their negotiating without me involved, so with the attorneys, so they can make sure that each person cuts out whole. Oftentimes, where we have maybe mom is a stay-at-home mom, she wants to stay in the home. That doesn't work. Now having to buy out her husband. She doesn't have the income. She may have the education, but maybe she hasn't worked for 5 or 6 years. So it's going to be very difficult for her to find a job that's going to yield her enough income to make the house payment that she, in order for her to buy out her soon-to-be ex-husband or her ex-husband, depending on where I'm involved in the transaction. We help maybe create a new income stream, come up with some solutions. Maybe, just maybe, the exiting spouse says, I'm going to give you a lump chunk of change out of my 401k so that way I can exit the marriage. But I want my portion of the equity of the house. Well, that's great that you're giving her a big chunk of change. That doesn't necessarily mean that she could afford to pay the house payment and keep the kids in their home because she doesn't have a job. She still has to keep the lights on. She still has to make the mortgage payment. So now, rather than just giving her that big dollar amount, let's work with the attorney on the quadro. Let's create an income stream with a revocable trust income in order to allow her to qualify for that mortgage so she can now do the equity buyout. She can exercise that. Everybody leaves whole. And the best part about all of this, the kids get to stay in their home. Everybody gets to stay where they need to be. Schools don't need to be changed. We get to stay in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, soccer teams, et cetera, et cetera. And mom, who's staying in the home, feels so much better because she has this income stream that's been created. She can afford her house, and she can move on. And if she has to go get a job, then she can go take care of business and not have to worry about maintaining a roof over her head.
And that's so important because obviously those are things that come up all the time. And, you know, people think that if it looks one way on paper, once you get the hard numbers and you do a tax return, just a mock return to see what does it really look like in reality, right? It's like someone's all shiny, but you open up that shiny thing, whatever it is.
Yes.
And it's not shiny inside. That's like, well, you know, it looks, you know, one way. But when you break it down and, you know, we have our tax business that's associated with our real estate business, we're able to help when they're in this situation, evaluate what makes sense because, you know, child support and, you know, spousal support are no longer able to write that off. And, you know, I think 2018. And sometimes it's better that the husband or wife, whoever is the income earner, pays the mortgage or helps with that because they can actually get an interest deduction against their taxes where on the other spousal support, they can't.
And you know better than anyone, especially because of your background. This is why we work together. Because what you're talking about as far as mitigating taxes is a fantastic approach. It's a fantastic strategy to make sure that A or B party doesn't have to pay taxes. But you well know that doesn't always translate when it comes to the mortgage. Right. So maybe washing out a payment, I'll make part of the payment or I'll give you some money to make the payment, that doesn't equate to qualifying for a new mortgage because there's a mortgage that's still showing on maybe her credit report, but even though he's giving her a little extra money that's not documented appropriately, doesn't mean we can eliminate that from qualifying. But look at the tax returns. Just like you said, it looks shiny on the top, but when you start digging in, it doesn't always look as pretty. And we need to make sure that we combine both of those. And in this situation where, as a mortgage advisor, in general, you look at everybody, the whole entire picture. You look at all the partners, the realtor, the CPA, the insurance agent, et cetera, and then when now put the divorce piece in there, now you've got the probate, the trust attorney, the divorce attorney, I apologize, and then not to mention, I just inherited a house or I inherited some money, but technically we were still married. Depending on which state we're lending in, there are all different types of rules that apply.
Yeah.
So, you and I have gone round and round and had these conversations
I
before.
know. It's like, what's fascinating, I've gotten calls many, many times in the past about these types of situations because the family attorney doesn't know sometimes. They get a quadro and they get the spreadsheet of what's there, but what do you do with all this? They're not in the tax business. They're not in the mortgage business. Where do we go with this? It's not like you take this car and then give her that. It doesn't work like that.
That's right.
Especially since the laws have changed. And us together, I think, can harmonize the divorce process, whether mediated or litigated, because if you put it all together, they'll come up with a better solution. It's not just forensics. It's not just that. It's just like what looks good for everyone. Tax savings, happy campers, all these things are just so important. And having people on your team when you're potentially going through this situation, like Amy and myself, is very productive. I did an interview years ago where, there was a situation where the women that were on there, one was married to a very wealthy producer, one was married to a restaurateur, a very famous restaurant. And we did a video because these two ladies have podcasts. And I do have it, so if anybody wants to see it, just shoot me an email or call me, and I'll provide that to you. We talked about all this. And in the interview, so many times they said, I wish I would have known you.
Yes. We have to partner, we have to advise. And one of the things that in this whole arena, there are many individuals, and especially for lending, for example, any loan officer can close a loan for someone who's been in a divorce. However, when you have somebody with the credential, with the background knowledge that actually has gone through mediation training, that understands the language, the terminology, and what's necessary, you'll hear the attorneys say, well, what's fair and equitable? And when you're sitting side by side working with all of the parties to come up with what's fair and equitable for these parties in front of you. And, many times it's extremely emotional. And when you can see the facial gestures change and the body language change right in front of you because all of a sudden they're breathing. And all of a sudden they have a solution, right? You go, okay, we did it. It may not be the exact picture that they wanted. It may not be as pretty as they wanted. However, all of a sudden, and especially because this is where you and I come from, their home, all of a sudden when a family, maybe, and in my example I was saying mom gets to keep her kids in their home. The Christmas tree gets to stay up in the same spot in the living room, in the big window, and we still can have some sort of continuance. Then it changes everything. And now it can change a different part of a divorce, or it could change a different part of a negotiation. You know that, right? I mean, when we're just doing the traditional part, right? Okay, give in this area, and then all of a sudden a buyer or seller is willing to give concessions in all other areas just because this one particular area they wanted to win, right? And it's all about, most often, it's all about the money that they walk away with.
It's really, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, people mad, angry, and they're looking for, to get back at people. But at the end of the day, it's all about money.
Right. Yeah.
The closure is all about money. There's usually an antidote. And so, when you deal with people that just don't brush aside and do what they're doing for everybody and treat each situation as it is so unique, and everybody has different situations, it's so important. And Amy, I don't think I mentioned it to you, but on October 15th, we're going to be having a vision board night afternoon from 3 to 5 down in my South Bay office. And we're inviting kids and parents to come join us from 3 to 5. And, of course, if anyone wants to know more about it, please reach out to me at 310-345-8500, or you can text me there, and I'll get you the information. Vision boards, the New Year's is coming, right? And
right.
I want to bring awareness to the community, and I want them to bring children, especially if they're going through some emotional thing, because when you put things down, I love vision boards, and you put things down on paper with pictures, and you can have the manifestation of it really coming to be. And when you work with children also, who I adore very much, you see their feelings through these things. What is the feeling? What is going on? What are they choosing? Is it happy stuff? Is it not?
It often gives you a great way to visually see what your outcome should be, or what you should strive for. Whether it's a death or divorce, there's a grieving process.
Right.
And many individuals deal with a counselor or a therapist in some way, shape, or form. And vision boards are a great way to therapize and to get through, and to be able to say, this is what I want to see again in the future. And it could very well be that home, or their existing home, or a home that they've been dreaming about, or, for the kids to see them each in their own bedroom. Well, that doesn't always translate in the words that you're hearing when the person's just saying, here's my W-2 and here's my pay stub, and oh my gosh, how am I going to afford this house?
What is all that?
But when you get to see the vision board, you go, oh, okay. Reality is she or he doesn't need the $1.2 million house. They could really be very happy with an $800,000 house or $600,000 house, and this is how I can get them there. Right?
That's right. That's so true.
It's extremely helpful. We need to think about, as all parties, and death and divorce are very synonymous when it comes to taxes. And that's where I turn to you and say, okay, how do we get out of this? To mitigate taxes. What are the least amount of taxes that we have to pay in order to still accomplish what we want? Exactly. How do we get there?
Yes. So, Amy, we're going to take a break. And those of you who can't stay with us, October 15th from 3 to 5, we're going to have Vision Board Afternoon with refreshments. Again, my number is 310-345-8500. We're going to take a break now. Please stay with us, because we have another part of trust and estate and mortgage. Yes. We'll be back. Hi. Thanks for coming back. You're listening to Listed by Mina Kuper. We're about real estate, trust, probate, divorce, and more. We're at 98.1 FM, 1220 AM. You can also catch us on KHTS Hometown Station Facebook page. And if you don't use Facebook, we have another way, KHTS Radio app. Everyone has an app. So you can always catch our stories and my professionals that I work with on there. So we're back now. We're talking about dissolutions, relationships, and financing, and all that fun stuff, and so many things that go into it. So Amy is a pro at these kind of dissolutions, relationships, and help with the other professionals involved, helping come up with a solution that works for everybody if possible. So, when you talk about estate and buying out the heirs, things of that nature, Amy, what does that look like? We talked about divorce. What does, death do us part things look like?
Yeah. Well, when there's an inherited property, We talked about the divorce side, and there's so many moving parts. But when there's an inherited property, oftentimes we find that there are multiple heirs. It's not just one particular person. And many times we see that each heir wants their piece of the pie. Sometimes, though, however, there's one that maybe one of the brothers or one of the sisters or even a niece or nephew actually moved in to take care of their ailing aunt, uncle, father, mother, etc. And they really would like to stay there. That has become their home. Well, now what? The heirs want their piece of the pie. So the person who is staying in the house, now they have to buy out the other parties, which we can make that happen with an equity buyout. So that's not a problem. Same process occurs where that particular party has to qualify for a mortgage great enough to buy out the other parties. And really, we know that because it's based off of the trust and based off of the value of the property. Now, what happens, though, when the flip side occurs? When you have a few brothers and sisters, which I just had this happen recently. We had three brothers and sisters, and one said, I don't want any money. I would much rather prefer I'll forego my piece. There were some other family issues going on and said, I'll walk away. Well, if the trust is already written up where that particular person gets a certain portion, now additional documentation is required, including reaching back out to the attorneys that did the trust to say, hey, thank you very much. I know my parents left me and I'm an heir to this property. However, I'm going to forego that. Well, you can't just magically say, hey, don't give me any money. There's a legal document attached to that property, and we have to make sure that we follow the appropriate proceedings. So we need to get additional documentation that allows them to do that. So that way the equity buyout now only is given to the other parties and split up accordingly. And the attorneys take the lead in that. They restructure or they give us a different amount based off of the original trust, the way it was written up. And they know how it was supposed to be divided amongst the heirs, so they'll be able to give us appropriate guidance. And that's a pretty big factor when you think about this. I mean, if I've got to buy out two siblings and I've got to come up with $500,000, for example, now one sibling says, never mind, I don't want my money. I don't need $250,000. Chuckle, right? That's very, very different. I'll be your proxy. But now all of a sudden, for me to come up with $250,000 is a lot easier than $500,000, and my ability to qualify for $250,000 is going to be a lot easier than it is going to be for $500,000. So that changes the dynamic changes dramatically. My job, that's where now I'm looking at that advisory credential and saying, thank you for having that, because this is where I get to say, let's go talk to the attorney. And by the way, when we handle this buyout, you're going to receive documentation from the county that's going to say, hey, we need to reassess the property because now we've seen a title change. And there's documents that you need to complete. And you're probably going to want to go sit with your attorney to make sure that you're completing them correctly. So now you're not paying property taxes based off of this $1 million property that was originally assessed at $150,000, right?
That's right. You can potentially keep the tax basis to the original.
That's right. And people don't know that. And many times what I find here, the biggest issue that I see when it comes to inherited properties is people don't do anything because they're afraid to trigger some sort of tax liability, whether income or property, right?
Same thing.
So like 7 years later, they come to me and say, oh, now we want to actually handle it. That doesn't mean that you're never going to have to handle this issue. It doesn't mean you get to just be ignored by the county. They're still going to see that title was triggered. We still have to handle these things, and we need to make sure that all documents are filed appropriately. And that's where I come in and I advise on that, and make sure, hey, this is a red flag. Let's call in our realtor. Let's get with Mina, because we need to make sure we're looking at taxes and what's going to happen, and what is the best approach, and how are we going to handle this property.
Right. And, it's so important that, before even going to an attorney, if you're premeditating all this, things that are going to happen, someone's in hospice, someone's whatever, you can kick the tires with us, and
yes.
We're free of charge. Sit there and kind of see what the options are. What does it look like, right? If you do this, if you do that, because, again, it's emotional, and you can be a Harvard graduate and making $1 billion a year. But when it comes to this type of situations that occur in life, unforeseen circumstances, it's really a puzzle, and if you don't do that, if you make tires and you're a tire company, you probably won't know much about this, right? But you'll know how to make great tires and make $1 billion selling them, right? So, it goes back to, I know when I go to do something, I go to someone who does it all the time, because they'll have all these different options that I can look at. And,
Absolutely.
It's so important, right? Because if I had $1 for every person that says, I wish I would have known you, I'm like, I should just write a book. I wish I would have known you. Amy, maybe you and I should write a book. I wish I would have known you.
We wouldn't have to worry about being somebody's
relationship. I think maybe we should have come to think about it. I wish I would have known you. I'm like, yeah, I do too, because, I can't retroactively, intercept the party that's been signed off already, regardless of things that were missed or potential outcomes that could have taken place instead of this. People don't always do a deep dive, because how do you find people like us? They're not that common. They're not. I hate to say it, not to my own horn and your horn. But in a sense, I am. It's not about that. It's about being able to educate people. So when they do something, they have all these options put in front of them where it's factual. Right. It makes sense on paper. You really grind it down.
My favorite story about this is the divorce situation that I dealt with. And I'll express it like this. It is not my job to know how to file a divorce, nor is it the attorney's job to know how to get the proper loan for the spouse that wants to stay in the house. So I had the phone ring, and this lady is calling, and she's on the phone sobbing. She's crying. I can't even completely understand her words. And she says that the attorney told her she had to get a cash-out refinance to buy out her ex-husband. The lender she's working with is working up the cash-out refinance, but she can't get enough money to buy out the ex. And the ex is saying that she's going to have to sell. And she's panicking because she has no idea. She specifically says, I have no idea where the kids and I are going to go. We have no place to go.
Oh, gosh.
Now I jump in and I start having some conversations with the attorney, have some conversations with her, and we changed 2 words. 2 words were changed in the documentation, in the divorce. When we changed those 2 words, it completely changed the type of transaction she now qualified for. She was able to access an additional $200,000 of equity. What do you do? She bought out the ex-husband, and she was able to stay in her home. 2 words. That's it. That's why you go to someone who does it all the time, to your point. That's why you don't just go to somebody and say, please help me. No, you need somebody who has the credential, who deals with this on a regular basis, so that way we can work through it. The attorney didn't even think twice. Okay, let's make those appropriate changes, because he knew what we needed, that we could change it. He knew exactly how to change it, and he fast-tracked it. That opened the door for me to do the home loan, and she was able to get the money to buy out the ex-husband. And the ex-husband, as soon as he heard that there was a solution, completely backed off and said, I'll work with you until she can close the loan.
Awesome.
Gave her an extension.
That is just so, like, a relief for everybody. Changed their life.
Exactly. So do you think $200,000 can change your life? Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, because, look, at the end of the day, everybody's Googling everything, right? And it becomes such a crazy situation because everything comes up when you Google this, right? Attorneys and people that buy your cars when you go into all kinds of things. And people that say they do it and they don't really do it,
Right.
And it's like anything. I mean, I've Googled things that were very specific, and I'm like, what am I going to do, call all these people? But luckily, we have a large audience here, and knowing that people know us, whoever we can grab and get them identified with what is going on. You can't help everybody, but you can help a lot of people, if people talk about us. And, free service of analyzing a situation is huge for preparing a plan, right? You need a plan. And just I'm going to get divorced and hell with this. Or, you need a plan.
Right.
Without a plan, things usually don't work well. And, of course, things intercept sometimes when you have a plan, but then you work through that, too.
I think it offers hope.
Yes, right. It does.
We're able to help families.
Yeah. And Amy, you're licensed in how many states now?
Multiple. Boy, that was a good question. My favorite state, I can lend nationwide. My favorite states to lend in are California, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, the state of Washington, North Carolina, and Georgia. So there's 7.
Great.
I'm going to be doing more in Colorado and more in Texas coming up real soon here as well.
Oh, good. I'm licensed in Arizona.
Well, and Arizona, here we come.
Here we come.
I do a lot in Arizona. Back. I do a lot there, yes.
Yeah, I just got back. I was there a few days. It was nice.
Absolutely. When we're helping individuals, that's something else that I want to make sure that I stress. When we, for example, working with some clients that were leaving California and moving to California, and there was an inherited property involved and things like that. Mm-hmm. The property tax laws in California do not apply in Arizona. They're two very different sets of laws.
Very different. Everything is very different.
And qualifying is very different. My job is not to practice law. My job is to make sure that you know that maybe your property tax base here of 1.25% in California is not going to be the same in Fort Mojave, Arizona, because, by the way, it's 0.62. Right. So do you think you're going to be able to qualify for just a little more home over there? It's my job to do that homework to find out how much property taxes are in the neighborhood that you're looking. Same thing applies in Nevada, for example. There are some. If you read the county tax assessor and you read what the property taxes are on a particular property, it looks like they pay $10,000, $20,000 per property in property taxes a year, and for $150,000 house, and that's not the case. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's much lower.
It's much lower. I mean, in Arizona, the property taxes are by county, right? So you have Maricopa, you have Pima, different counties. They're pretty close together, but they have different tax bases.
Yes.
And everything's different there,
Right.
So California, a little more complicated. But, people love California. Some people have homes in both places. Right? Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great. It's great. Not too far, pretty close by. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the market, right? I know we're going
Right.
to take a break soon, but I'll start at least.
Okay.
Everybody's asking, what's the market doing? Oh, what's the market doing? I don't know. Let me see what happened with the interest rates today. Listen, right? The law of gravity. What goes up must come down.
That's right.
Nothing
And
stays constant.
this is what I tell people, and this is, I can say this very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The Fed fund rate is not equal to a mortgage rate. And if there's anything anyone can take away from me, is that the Fed fund rate is not equal to mortgage rates. And when the Fed is raising the Fed fund rate, they are doing it to combat inflation. Inflation is the arch enemy of mortgage interest rates. If we can get inflation to come down, we will see mortgage interest rates come down. The strategy that they're working on right now is to bring down inflation. So the law of gravity will apply, and we will see interest rates come back down. Does anybody have that crystal ball to be able to say exactly when? No, because we need the market to adjust, and we need the market to respond to what the Feds are doing. And it will just take time, but it will happen. Do you think you're going to see 2% again? I don't. But the fact of the matter is we will see lower interest rates again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's just like you said, the law of gravity.
Right. And hey, the real estate rentals are so expensive. You'd be surprised how close it would be, or even less expensive if you actually buy something. There's so many different programs out there.
Mm-hmm.
The rents are outrageous in Arizona and California more so. But Arizona went up also. A lot of people flocked over there. But the rental market is so high, and sometimes it's better to buy something. The interest rate's a little lower, a little higher, and so the prices are a little lower. But we're going to come back in a few minutes, and we'll see you in a few minutes. We'll have a little more to talk about. Well, welcome back to Listed by Mina Kuper, 98.1 FM, 1220 AM, KHTS Radio Facebook page. You can watch us there at any time and listen to us, or if you don't have that, the KHTS Radio app, and you can download that and watch our show every Thursday from 12 to 1. So we're going to be wrapping it up now. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the market. So Amy and I both are, Amy's in mortgage, I'm in real estate and tax. And like we were talking about, rental market is outrageous. It still pays to buy something, right, Amy?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We know the national average. When I talk, by the way, I'm based in Southern California. However, I speak national averages. We know the national averages range from 5 to 9% on how rents will increase annually.
Right.
People talk about, oh my gosh, I can't afford that house payment and it's so much higher. Well, your rent is going to be rising every single year, 5 to 9%, depending on which market you're in. And I've heard of much higher increases in certain pockets that I deal with. So what you tell me, is it better for your rent that you don't own that property? You have no control. Is it better to be in a position like that where your rent is rising, or would you like to own that property, be gaining some equity, like a savings account, and maintain the same house payment? It's still the best way to gain some wealth and stability.
Yes. It's always good to have a roof over your head. Amy, what's a great way for people to reach you? So they can reach out to you. Of course, they can always find you on Facebook or the app, or call me. What is the best way for them to reach you?
Well, first and foremost, let me give you my number, 626-485-4673. I have a website that's homeloanclosing.com. And on social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Amy Valdivia. Just look me up and you can go ahead and communicate with me right there. I'm happy to answer any questions, and you can see some posts and videos and a whole bunch of information about mortgages.
Awesome. I am so excited that we got to talk about this. And again, vision board night, afternoon, not night. 8+ kids age is good for vision board. We're going to use scissors, kid scissors. 3 to 5 it's going to be at my South Bay office at Keller Williams. Reach out to me at 310-345-8500. Text me if you'd like an invite. Tell your friends about it. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have refreshments. And thank you so much for listening to Listed by Mina Kuper. We're about real estate, trust, probate, divorce, and more. We're on every Thursday from 12 to 1. Again, thank you.